welcome back to episode 39 of Tallboy Radio. And if you recognise the voice from the last time I hosted, you'll realise that it's me, it's Gaz. I'm in the driving seat again this week. So before I introduce the topic and we dive straight in, just going to introduce you the two guys, our normal set of hosts this evening. So Adam, do you want to just say a quick hi and tell everybody what you're drinking?
Yeah, hi, how's it going? This week I'm drinking a beer that I think Andy would approve of. It's about the closest thing to a Boilermaker that I would accept. It's McEwen's Headspace, which is a Scotch whiskey beer. I've got to say, actually, it's not too bad. It's better than the Boilermakers you've given me before, Andy. I have to say that, dude.
And Andy?
I wish I was on a Boilermaker, but I'm on a Beavertown Lupoloid. So I might get a bit leery later on as we get going. Well, considering we're still in October, I'm still on the no drinking month, so I'm just doing the good old Rosie Lee cup of tea. Can't wait for 10 days' time when I can perhaps have a beer. But swiftly moving on, I don't know whether or not you guys have picked it up from a couple of the sort of Facebook messages and social media messages, but I've been struck down with the old sort of COVID over the last sort of week to 10 days or so. So I'm sort of recovered now. But it got me thinking while I was sort of rehabilitating, and it gave me some time to think about and reminisce, really. And that was where the idea of this sort of episode came from. And I've entitled it sort of School Days, really. And I just, I just sat there and I was thinking, what a good time that we used to have, and we used to have some sort of favourite memories and this, that, and the other. So I just sort of try and centre an episode around it, really. So I'm just going to, as normal when I'm in the hot seat, I'm just going to fire off a couple of sort of questions and a couple of sort of little anecdotes. So I suppose the first thing, and I'm going to pick on Adam first because I listened back to the last one, and the last time I picked on Andy first, so I hadn't got all the chance to think of all the answers. So I'm going to fire into the first question, which is, it's a simple yes or no, I suppose. School days then, best days of your life, yes or no? Ad, do you want to go first?
I do, and I would say 100% yes. Honestly, it's awesome. No mortgage, no stress about where your money's coming from. It was always, Mum, can I have 20 quid? It was normally the answer was no. But yeah, I love my school days. I absolutely loved them. If I had the opportunity to go and relive them now, I'd probably bite a hand off and go and do that.
Yeah. Andy, are you similar?
I don't know. I think at the time, I wasn't the biggest fan of it. But when I look back now, like I say, life was so easy. No pressure, well, I suppose you had to do exams or whatever, but other than that, just go to school, mess around with your mates and stuff. Yeah, easy.
Yeah. It's weird because, I think I'm the same because, sort of sitting there sort of thinking, reminiscing about stuff, and you think, and for all those reasons really that you've just said, I think, you had such good memories, and I think if there were, and don't get me wrong, and obviously if there are people out there, and there'll be lots of people out there that perhaps school isn't and hasn't been the best time for them, and for a variety of reasons, but from talking for me, obviously personally, I loved them. As Andy said, you got to sort of, you basically got to hang out with your mates pretty much every day. So for me, they were. There was some. You don't get me wrong. There's some. When you look back, there's some things that you think, oh yeah, I didn't really enjoy that. But I think overall, on the whole, I think it was, for me, sort of school days, best days of your life, really. Which leads me on to, if that's the case, and possibly Andy might have mentioned it. Why? Why is it that we hold our school days to such high regard? And everybody says that, oh, school days are the best days of your life. And when you are at school, you're like, yeah, whatever. Was it just the fact that there was just so little responsibility, money and family and all that? Is that the reason? Is that the only reason? Were there other reasons, Ad?
I don't know. I think you've both really summed it up there. First of all, you were carefree. You didn't have to worry about where your money was coming from. You didn't worry about whether your mortgage was going to get paid that month, whether your car loan was going to get paid off. Literally, nothing like that ever entered into your head. Literally, it was, I hope the Boffy's got my favourite sweets, and that was your biggest your biggest concern of the week, wasn't it?
It was the Boff man. Yeah, brilliant that was.
Literally, it was hanging around with your mates every single day. Most of the time, really not that interested in what work I was doing or supposed to be doing. I loved it, and I guess I don't think ever thinking at any one time that when people were saying, these are the best time of your life, I never once thought, yeah, whatever. I always think, yeah, you're damn right. I'm loving this. I'm going to make the most of this because it's carefree and it was awesome.
I suppose we were quite lucky that obviously our school days extended through to sort of college and then sort of on to uni and stuff. And when I say school days, I obviously group in particular college into that bracket. University is obviously slightly different, but when I sort of say school days, I lump school and college sort of in the same bracket, just because I had so many just fun memories of college, really. Okay, so here's the first question then. So Ad, you first then. Favourite year when you were at sort of secondary school? So was it lower down in the school or was it later on? So what was your favourite time in secondary school then?
Sixth form. I love sixth form because first of all they started treating you like an adult, like that we're not going to make you learn anything, which for me was an absolute winner because if you treat me like an adult, I'm still a child up until into my 30s. So, and then I got kicked off maths A level, so I had like 5 extra frees a week.
Nice.
So all that free time on your hand. And to be honest, I never did any work anyway, which is why I achieved the grades that I did. Or didn't.
Didn't, yeah.
Yeah, I know. I love sixth form. Absolute laugh. We weren't there that often, were we? And to be honest, I think that's probably the first time I met you. We went to the same school for the first 5 years, but I don't think I knew you in the first 5 years. I mean, I remember you announcing yourself to the year in the social area on one occasion.
That wasn't me. Still maintain that. Completely innocent. That's a whole different story. That might come into one of the questions and categories later on. So, Andy, what about yourself then? What sort of, if you said that, I suppose you did enjoy your time at school, what was the best sort of period then in terms of your school years?
Definitely the later. I used to be in every team for the sports, for example.
Yeah.
But then as the years went on, I sort of got more known throughout the school and stuff like that. And I knew all the cool kids and the nerds and stuff. And the later years were a lot easier just because I knew everyone, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I used to play basketball, for example, like before school, break time, dinner time, after school, and the teachers gave me they let me teach the younger years as well in basketball and stuff like that. So it was really good last few years.
And do you think there was almost more of a respect there from the teachers? And do you think this happens in terms of sort of sporting teams or sort of drama or music? Do you think if you start to make a name for yourself in extracurricular activities, you think you get a little bit of leeway from the teachers to a certain extent, or do you think they just?
I did. I used to have. I used to represent the county for high jump and stuff like that. So I used to get days off school. It was brilliant.
Yeah, just to go to the meets and stuff.
Yeah. So you get a whole day off, and then you're doing 10 minutes worth. Of
stand around and then jump over something for 10 minutes.
Yeah,
it was weird really because so growing up, I was obviously always dead sporting stuff, so I was into like loads of different clubs and I think you're right. I think when people sort of started to know your name a little bit, and then when you start to represent county and you start to perhaps go up a little bit and start looking at perhaps sort of senior county level and this, that, and the other, I think there was a little bit of sort of kudos and stuff. And it's weird because if Sid was here, he'd tell you that he obviously played a lot of cricket, and we ended up playing in our league match against one of the teams that one of the PE teachers played for, and he was a fast bowler and Sid was a batsman. And basically at the weekend, Sid batted really well and ended up scoring 100 against this teacher sort of thing, and then sort of strutted in on the Monday morning like dead proud as punch and stuff, and this teacher's completely blanked him, just like properly just blanked him, proper saw his arse. It was dead funny. And Sid will tell you that story if you chat to him about it. So so for me, I think later on in the school years, as I say, I think
early on, you try and find your feet, don't you? You're new into the school stuff, but I absolutely agree with that. Like, my sixth form days were such a laugh, and there were so many sort of stories and stuff. Not necessarily stories about hard work and dedication and applying yourself and all of that. It was just some of the stuff that we got up to was funny. But as I say, they'll come a bit later. Okay, then add favourite lesson then. So you can either go sort of lower down in the school, or you could do sort of sixth form if you want to. But favourite lesson, and then obviously why.
Maths. I love maths because I was good at it and I didn't have to try.
Yeah,
it just came naturally to me, so I could do it. I always remember Miss Borthwick saying to me before I did my GCSEs, she said, "You know what? This is your subject. I guarantee if you put the bare minimum effort in, you'll get an A. If you don't try at all, you'll get a C." And I thought, "Oh, winner! If I don't try, I'm going to get a C. I'll pass." So I'll take your word for it.
I'll take that.
Credit where credit's due. She was right. Didn't do a damn thing and got a C.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Andy, then, so favourite subject then?
I did enjoy maths because it was one of the more challenging lessons. But I'd probably go with either German or PE. Yeah. PE was brilliant. Just run around the field for an hour or something. Yeah. Easy.
No, I'm very much like PE. PE for me, that was like highlight of the week. I used to love PE. Didn't necessarily love sort of athletics, but any of the racket sports, any of the team sports and stuff, I absolutely loved that. Whether it's indoor or outdoor, whatever it was, I love that. So I used to live for those, like, was it in them days, like 2 hours a week or whatever it was. And it used to be brilliant. I used to love that. Maths for me I did quite enjoy maths because I'm always like a sort of a yes or a no. Maths is like a right and a wrong, isn't there? And I'm just the same with Adam. I did very, very, very little work in maths. And again, didn't really apply at all, to be honest. But it sort of was one of those, it was either right or wrong. Do you know what I mean? And I know you got marks for method and all that, but to me it was either, look, you can get to the answer or you can't. And it's none of this, like, it seemed like it was a yes or no, none of this like sort of wishy-washy, very subjective stuff. Do you know what I mean? So I think PE and maths really for me. Okay, flip that then. Worst subject. So there's two questions there really. So which was the one that you disliked the most, and which was the one that you were worst at? And they could be the same, they could be different.
No, for me it's the same one, and I don't think you'll be too surprised to hear me say that it was PE. I was listening to Andy there, obviously, because we didn't go to school with Andy, and it doesn't really surprise me that he was quite sporty and playing basketball before school. That wasn't me. I used to forge my mum's handwriting to get out of PE lessons. I hated it. I only learned one valuable lesson in PE, and that was don't piss off Medwin Jones, if you remember him.
I do remember him.
Yeah, he taught boxing one year. Like he did boxing when we were at school.
Yeah.
And basically every time that I'd pissed him off, he remembered it. And he said, yeah. So as soon as we were doing boxing, it was, go on, lad, put on some gloves. And I was like, all right, I'm not bothered. I got nowhere near him. He did not hold back. I tell you what, he gave me a belting. And I'm not saying I didn't deserve it, because I probably did. But no.
Well, one of the stories about Medwin, Medwin was Welsh guy, if you couldn't tell from Adam's accent. And basically he was an ex-PT instructor in the army, obviously come out of the army and moved into sort of teaching. And he was about, I would say, 5'3", 5'4", real tiny guy. But basically boxed for the army at lightweight, strawweight, whatever weight division it was. And he was obviously pretty handy, pretty useful. And I remember the story once, and Adam was right. He was like, right, boys, we're going to put the gloves on, lace the gloves up. And there was a lad in our year who was a bit of a bully. And I won't mention his name, but there's a bit of a bully in our year. And Medwin basically caught on to the fact that this bully was bullying these other lads. And he's like, right, lads, lace them up. And everyone's looking around. And he's like, and he pointed to this lad and he goes, in the middle, like this. And this lad's like, yes, here we go, like this. And he's like, so who am I fighting then, sir? So, and he was like, me. And he laced his gloves up. And the guy in question was not quite as tall as Adam, but he's probably 6'1", something like that. And obviously Medwin was like 5'3", 5'4". And this lad's giving it the big and thinking, yes, I get to crack a teacher sort of thing.
And I'm not even joking you. I think Medwin hit him 3 times before he even realised what had gone on and basically picked him up off the floor. Literally, this lad's just slumped down on the floor and he's picked him like, you know what that's for, don't you, boyo? Like this, stood him up, sort of thing, sent him on his way. And it's like, right, boys. And then like, pair up, and you're like, oh my God. Honestly, it was brilliant. One of the abiding memories, just in picking this lad up off the floor. Literally, his lad's legs had just gone. It's brilliant. So yeah, that was Medwin. I liked Medwin. He was brilliant. And obviously dead sporty and stuff. So we got on quite well because playing in lots of sporting stuff. So okay then, Andy. So same for you then. Sort of least favourite stroke, sort of worst lesson. Then what do you think?
Oof. I didn't like French. I thought that was not. I just didn't like it. I just couldn't understand it.
Yeah.
Honestly. We had horticulture as well, so we had to do like.
Okay.
We had a farm on our school, so we had to learn like soils and stuff. I didn't enjoy that.
In Stoke? Did you go to school in Stoke?
I never went to Stoke. No.
Oh no, I thought you were in Stoke. I thought it was Stoke.
No.
It must be out of stick somewhere. I was going to say, what the hell?
Yeah, no, I never lived in Stoke or anything like that. It's, I'm from like Northwich and I moved to Lancaster, so it's all like Lancaster's like a farming sort of area sort of thing. So yeah, we had a farm, and I think the best bit actually of the lesson was plucking a turkey at Christmas. It was still warm. Like we walked past all these turkeys, went into the classroom, and all clucking away and all that. Came back outside, like, all right, you're gonna learn how to pluck a turkey now. Came outside, it's quiet. It's like, well, the turkey's gone. We were in a barn and they're all hanging there. Oh yeah, there's yours. And it was tough, but it was interesting. But yeah, I think that I didn't like it, horticulture. I didn't like learning about soils and stones and all that sort of stuff. If I did it now, I'd probably enjoy it. But yeah, back then I was like, oh, this is hella boring.
I think I was so. I was never one for sort of creating stuff, so sort of woodwork, metalwork and stuff. And used to have a bit of a laugh and a play around with some of the machines and stuff. But then obviously, you know, the teachers have been pretty hot on saying, oh, you know, I'll put that chisel down or whatever, you're going to hurt yourself. And one of my worst memories of school, and I suppose it goes down as my worst sort of lesson teacher as such, was and again, I won't mention his name. We were in woodwork, and there was a teacher who used to love watching Crown Green Bowls, and he had a tiny little sort of TV set behind his desk, and he used to watch Crown Green Bowls. He'd be like, right, lads, just go and playing some of that or saw some of that, and he'd be like watching behind his desk sort of thing. Anyway, we did this piece of work, and he basically said, he says, right, I'm going to be marking this out of 10, so obviously the higher the number, the better sort of thing. So if it's out of 10. Anyway, he started writing in his book, and he'd go across the name, and he'd have a look at this piece of work, and he wrote 13. And you'd have somebody else who'd be like, 17. And it's like I sort of whispered to the lad standing next to me, and I said, I thought he said it was out of 10. And he's like, why is he putting like 13 and 17? Well, anyway, the teacher heard me, and I kid you not, and I swear not, he went like this, full on, back elbow, and hit me right in the middle of the chest and sent me basically skidding across the floor. And I'm just like slumped against his like woodwork desk, and I'm like, this literally gasping for breath. And he comes over, and he didn't sort of say, oh, sorry or whatever. He just stood over me and he goes, I can write what I damn well want to write in my book, and who are you to tell me different? And I'm like, I'm sorry, sort of thing. But he literally like pointed his elbow at me right in the chest bone. And that's how I went skinning. Well, so I went home, and sort of, my old man was sort of, oh, a good day. I was like, no, not really. And I told him, and he was like, right. My old man went sort of frog marching down to the school, because my old man sort of knew the head quite well, because the leisure centre, my old man managed the leisure centre, and the leisure centre was attached to school, so he knew the head quite well, and they had a sort of a relationship in terms of the school could use the facilities during the day when the leisure centre was quiet and all that. So he knew the head quite well, and he went frog marching down and stuff. So yeah, I never did get an apology. But I still, to this day, I still don't know why. Still don't know why. He's writing like 40. He literally said, well, I'm going to mark this out of 10. I was like, what are you doing then? Sort of thing.
Could have been very good work. He thought, that deserves 13 out of 10. That's brilliant.
Yeah, mate, honestly, the 13 was terrible. It didn't deserve 3, let alone 13.
Unless it was an IQ rating.
But yeah, and you failed. Honestly, yeah. So he proper like whacked me right in the chest, and that's skidding across the floor. And I just remember thinking, right, that's it. just don't enjoy the subject. And I was only quite young and stuff because I think I must have only been in year sort of maybe 7 or 8, maybe 8, 9. It certainly wasn't higher up in the school when I was quite low down in school. And from that moment on, that was it. Then it's just like, no, you know what? not a fan of that. Not a fan of that. So yeah, that was probably my worst. Didn't mind some of the language. Didn't mind French. I did okay in French, believe it or not. I didn't mind that. We had couple of different, so obviously French teachers. And again, a funny story. Towards the end of the year, we sort of sat there with little cocktail umbrellas because one of the guys had quite a bad lisp and quite a bad, so not speech impediment, but he used to basically spit at people. So the last lesson, we sat on the front row and basically just had a little cocktail stick umbrellas like this. And every time we got asked a question, it was just a minute, sir. Like if we put this little umbrella up like this and sit behind it, and he fair play. He was, you know, he played along and stuff. He was fun, but again, I won't mention his name for libelous reasons, obviously. Okay, then. So, a bit of reminiscing then, and I'm gonna leave the sort of funny stories. Who was your best mate then at school? And I'm talking years 7 to 11, or in the old school money years 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So basically, your sort of GCSE years and before. So, who was your best mate and sort of why? Go on, you go first then.
The lower 5. Used to be 4 of us who used to hang around together. Matt Barker, Joe McConnell, and Jason Daniels. I'd say probably Joe, to be honest, because Joe was a real character. And a keen poet now, actually, interestingly enough. So yeah, I would say probably Joe. We had some good laughs together. We all came up from the same primary school, ended up in the same form. So the 4 of us, which is really nice. So yeah, I would say them, because I have to say that because I did knock around Gaz in the lower 5, so that's okay to say that.
Yeah, no, we didn't really, did we? It's weird because we obviously went to the same school sort of thing, and we never really. I mean, obviously, we're probably aware of each other. We've probably seen each other around and stuff. I don't think we were in many lessons together, really. I don't recall.
I don't think we were in any.
No.
I did geography with Dave. We had a mutual friend, Dave, didn't we? In 4th and 5th year.
Yeah.
And then obviously we went up to 6th form. So I was knocking around with Dave.
Yeah.
I think that's where I met you.
Yeah,
I think so. Detention together.
No.
I don't think well, if we did have a detention, we never went. So
no, I was about to say you could put me in detention. I was never going to turn up.
So yes, Andy. Then, sort of, who was your best mate then, sort of growing up, or was there one, or was there sort of a group of you?
I'd say a group, because in primary school I lived in Northwich, and so I had like a big group there. And then my final year primary school, I moved up to Lancaster and had to meet all these new people and stuff. And there's only a few of them went to the same high school, so there's a small group of us. And then all through high school, it probably stayed the same sort of group, to be honest. And I now don't speak to any of them.
Really?
Yeah, I speak to maybe 1 or 2 of them every couple of months or something like that. One of them, his dad moved to New Zealand when we were in. I think it was before high school, actually. So when I joined the army, he stayed on, did college, went university and all that stuff. But then he moved to New Zealand, and he's interesting enough. He's doing photography and stuff like that, and it's really good. Which quite surprised me. I didn't realise he liked it, because I love photography. But he's just another level. So he's there in Japan, and I think he's gone all around Asia. I think he's back in Australia or New Zealand now. It's just interesting how different it is. But yeah, basically, to answer your question, it's a big group.
Yeah, it's weird because I was a bit of a geek, bit of a nerd sort of thing. So I definitely wasn't one of the cool kids, and definitely wasn't one of the what our kids now would call like the road men or roadies, whatever, the big hard lads that hang around on street corners drinking White Lightning sort of thing. So I was never really one for them. To be honest, just too busy with sort of sports throughout the week, really. So I think there was 3 or 4, and we were a bit just like the waifs and strays, really. I remember there was a lad called Stephen Hughes who was about 6'4", 5". He was quite a good mate, so lower down the school. But ironically, Dave really was. I sort of knocked about with most really lower down in the school, just because we came from the same primary school. So Dave, we sort of had a friendship there throughout lower school, and then Nick Govier. So I used to hang around quite a lot with Nick.
He's over in America now. He emigrated there and sort of family stuff over there now. So he used to hang out because he lived in sort of Church Lawton, and then there was a group of us in. I mean, there was Baz, there was Bob, sort of Sinclair, there was Lee Adams, Scott. So there were lads that we sort of hung around with, but not massively in school. It was weird. Like we had like a real close knit group of mates that would hang around literally like every night, every weekend. We just hang around together. But it was weird, like in school, I suppose, because a lot of my mates weren't in the same sector as I was, either they were above or below. It was weird. So probably Dave hung around with quite a lot. And then, like I say, Nick, Steve Hughes hung around with quite a lot. There was a lad called Kelvin Moore who he went to the same primary school as us, and I sort of stopped hanging around with him a little bit, but then he sort of went off and sort of into his own sort of friendship group, so didn't really hang around him that much. So yeah, same with me really. It wasn't really one. It was just a group, if you know what I mean. Just all grew up together really. That was.
And as a point of interest as well, Dave, that you're talking about now, that we both mentioned, he's the guy who does the website for us. He's built, helped do the website. Took down the email one day last week when he was setting us up with a new email address, so nobody could email us for a couple of days last week. So. Cheers, Dave.
But all good now. So if you do want to get in touch with us via all social media aspects and stuff, right, here's one for you then. And you don't necessarily have to mention any names if you don't want to. First teacher crush. Ad.
Miss Woodcock.
It's in the name.
Yeah. There's an obvious pun there, but I'm not going there, I promise.
To be honest, dude, it doesn't surprise me that you said that, because pretty much every lad that went through that school had a massive crush on her.
But this is the best thing, though. She was Miss Woodcock, and then she married a guy and became Mrs. Catchpole.
She did.
True story, I promise.
He taught, was it environmental science or something?
Yeah,
lower down in the humanities or something.
He was the biggest goober you could ever meet in your life. He had a proper Borat mustache.
I like.
Yeah.
Honestly, I would have said exactly the same, because I think every lad that went through Osage School during that time period, if you asked the same question to, it would have been her.
Yeah, that might be why maths is my favourite subject now.
Yeah, well, yeah, there you go. It's funny, there was a. I remember the years and years ago, primary school, and it was I was in year 6, so the last year going up, and we had an exchange student teacher over. She was from Canada, and I think it's the first time that I sort of sat there and just gone. And literally, like, she started talking. I don't remember her name, but I just remember sitting there going, "Wow!" And whether it's the accent or whatever, but that was sort of in a way the first one. But yeah, Miss Woodcock, absolutely, she was fine. Andy, come on, the news yours.
Probably my form tutor. I won't say her name, but she's like she did all the
Mike.
They had a pulse. No, she did all like hockey and sports and stuff, so she's like, the right figure. But I'll never forget. There's one standing teacher we had, and she used to cover like geography and stuff like that, and she was like a model, blonde hair, like slim and all this sort of stuff. But we used to have bets on how many times she said "okay." It was like every sentence, like "okay." So we're gonna do this, okay. It's just like, yeah, it's not a turn off.
Yeah, so it was weird. To be fair, there were a couple of sort of female teachers, but yeah, definitely Miss Woodcock was one that most sort of teenage lads going through the school would have said, yeah, definitely her. Okay then. Moving on then. So we're going to leave a couple of sort of funny stories till the end, really. Just a couple more questions, then we'll get into just a couple of the anecdotes then. School trips. Did you go on any? Did you go on many? Did you enjoy them? Ad?
What do you mean?
So
overnighters or just day
yeah,
trips?
So they could be residential. No, residential ones.
Yeah, we did a few. I remember Menai was the big one. I don't know if you went to Menai. When I was doing politics at A level, that was a good one. Do you know what? This is shocking now, Andy. I didn't drink back then, and I a couple of quid selling my beer tokens. We all had beer tokens at the end, selling them to some of the cooler kids, because you might be surprised to learn I wasn't a cool kid either. I was definitely in the nerd stroke class clown area. But the only other one that I can remember, I think it's one we did at sixth form, where we went to the Black Country Museum. Did you go that time as well?
No, did I go there?
That was a good day out. In fact, me and Andy have been back there since, haven't we?
It rings a bell, but I don't remember specifically. But I know that I have been there, and I'm just trying to think whether I went with sort of Jenny and the kids, whatever. I know I've been there, but I don't remember it being on a trip as such.
And I think we might have been sixth form then, and basically they've got an old school pub as though it were in the 1920s, and they'll take you down in the mines, and obviously they weren't IDing anybody that day, so all you could hear, you're walking down the mines in as part of your class, all you could hear is what? Then it's just, the mines just stunk of beer for about 5 minutes.
Brilliant. So Andy, what about yourself? Sort of trips? Did you go on many or any or?
Not too many. I think there's always like the one big trip abroad, but I never did that. I can't remember why. I think we couldn't really afford it at the time because like a single parent and stuff. But I did like events training in the Lake District and stuff like that. But nothing. No, I can't remember is that one, to be honest.
I think like loads of the geographers used to go to like the Goit Valley and places like that where they did. I didn't take geography, but I remember they used to sort of go there. So when you went to Russia, was you at school? Was that a school trip then, or was that?
It was basically, they did a school trip from Russia. So I was 16, 17, and I forget what lesson it was. It wasn't one I was doing anyway. So they had a few spaces left. Right. So there was 5 of us to went along and just had a jolly and enjoyed some cheap champagne and some cheap caviar. It was quality. I know it's horrible to say it really, because for those, back then it would cost a lot of rubles, but for us, the English pound being as strong as it was against the ruble back then, it was cheap as chips. We were living the dream. Yeah,
I didn't do many sort of when I was secondary school. I mean, I did a few sort of residential just through sporting clubs that then meant the odd day here or there off school and stuff. But I suppose the only one from school really was when I think in year 7, and Sid was the last year of primary school, and they did a trip to northern France. They did like the Bayou tapestry and all of that sort of stuff. And again, I think there's a couple of spaces, and they basically said to the kids in the primary school, has anybody got an older brother or sister that wants to come along and stuff? So Sid was going to go, so I ended up going. And that was cool. We were there for about a week, and we did Bayou tapestry, and we did all around sort of Normandy and stuff. And that was pretty cool. Other than the day that I genuinely thought that I'd actually lost Sid. And we were walking around this like marketplace and stuff. We've been on the beach and stuff. Anyway, cut long story short, we were like, where's Sid? Obviously back then everyone called him Paul. His nickname Sid hadn't materialised then. But I was like, where's Sid? And nobody could see him. I was like, oh, and I was basically just distraught. I was like, 11 years old myself, 12 years old. I was like, I've lost my brother. My mum and dad are never going to forgive me, sort of thing. And he basically, he just wandered off on his own and then just decided just to go back to the bus. Like, obviously, it's sort of pretty much pre-mobile phones and stuff. So literally nobody knew where he was at all. And we must have been looking for him for, I would say over an hour, and sort of an hour and a half. And I'm literally, and like the teachers are there, like trying to sort of, no, it'll be fine. He'll turn up. It's like, but what if he doesn't? And all this, like, proper horror stories.
No, instead he probably pulled.
at the age of 10.
Yeah.
I'll find out in part 2.
We'll have to get him on and get him talking about it, because he'd basically gone back to the. I don't know whether he just got bored or he just got lost or whatever, but he basically just found his way back. How he found his way back, I don't know, but he basically found his way back to the bus and just sat on the bus for about an hour and a half. We were all like running around this pretty sort of small town, sort of village, trying to find him. Oh my God, it was horrendous. It was terrible. Right, so I've left a couple of sort of more humorous sort of anecdote stories then for me, but I'm just going to sort of go through you guys first. A funny story then from school. So when you think about school, and I know it's difficult maybe to boil down to one. So if you want to talk about 2 or 3, that's fine. But what was some of the funny stories that you can recount and recall from sort of school days? Ad, go on, you go first. It can be lower school or it can be sixth form. Take your pick.
there's one that really springs to mind that probably involves you or I, and it was probably the one time that any teachers placed any trust in us, and it was misguided trust. Let's be honest there. So obviously, you and I, let's face it, made a little bit of a mess of our A levels, didn't we?
Yeah.
Went back to college, and so we were 2 years older than everybody else. We had to reset this course 2 years and take us on to university. So being 2 years older than everybody else, there was an idea that we were therefore 2 years more responsible. So that when we went down to London on a day trip, we were put in charge of two of the younger guys there. Igo, who I've just added on Facebook recently, and if it wasn't for COVID, maybe actually he hasn't got COVID, but with yourself, we were going to record this last week. We were going to try and get him on the podcast. And a guy called John Balin, we were put in charge of making sure they were safe. And that was literally the second we were left in charge. It's like, yes, we're going to have some fun with these guys. So we tormented them for about an hour. I can remember you nailing Igo in the face with a mouthful of milkshake we bought from the local McDonald's.
We basically got to stand in front of this. Was it like a typical old school was it like a red phone box? People take photos of like phone box and stuff. And we basically just stood in there. It was like a photo booth sort of thing. And then we basically just did that, and it all. Drink went all over him. We just absolutely horrendous to him. Feel awful, really.
But then obviously, we've been down to London. I'm useless on the bloody tube, but Gaz and you are both okay. So we were using the tube, and we decided to run off and ditch him there. And then that was it. We didn't see him for the rest of the day. Gaz and I thought, this is absolutely hilarious. We got back to the bus. They were counting up. There's 30 people went down there. They counted 28 heads. Yeah, because the two guys that we'd ditched had got lost on the tube, were wandering around London, who had no idea where they were. And yeah, we found it hilarious.
Yes, yeah.
Teachers less so.
Yeah, teachers. And I remember, so the same Higo, we'd been for a night out, and we've been in this. Was it Higo's birthday? I think maybe. And we've been into a nightclub back in the day, as you do. And it got to quite late, and we ended up trying to ring for a taxi for him. And we were trying to get out of him where his taxi was going to. And I won't give his address just in case he still lives there, but he gave us this address. Anyway, this song came on. We were trying to book a taxi, and this song came on in the nightclub. So I had basically just I'm not missing this song. Sort of basically just says blah blah, says this address, hangs up, and we go in and start dancing around and stuff. Anyway, a bit later on, we walk outside. The taxi's there, and we're like, yeah, is this for us? And he's like, yeah, in you go. We're trying to push him in, and as we pushed him, I cracked his cheekbone on the side of the door and all sorts of stuff, horrendous. Anyway, I gave the address to where his house was. And I said to the guy, I was like, just read it back to me so you know where you're going. And he read back a completely different address. And I was like, yeah, it's close enough. And basically shoved this lad who was half unconscious through alcohol into the back of this taxi. Tapped on the, yeah, you're good. And this guy just drove off. And I stood there for about 30 seconds after thinking it was hilarious. Then thought, yeah, he's got no chance of getting home, this lad. So, A, I don't know where he ended up. B, I don't even know whether he got home that night. I'm assuming he got home safely at some point because I'd seen him obviously subsequently at college again and stuff. But yeah, that wasn't great. I think we probably pretty much terrorised that poor lad. But yeah, they were a couple of sort of stories. Andy, go on then. So, favourite sort of funny story or funny sort of memory recollection from school?
I don't really have anything. I mean,
oh come on, you've got to have something.
All I can think of is instances of someone calling a teacher mum, and then there's a few in year 7, your first year of high school. There's a couple of people did it mum. And other than that, some lad getting a boner and getting told to stand up in front of the class. And that's it. It's quite a boring school thinking back to it.
Oh, brilliant! I don't know whether or not I couldn't have been in the same class as you had, because do you remember a lad who had the pen on the back of his head? Do you remember that?
Yeah, Martin Hancock. That was.
Was that Martin Hancock? Yeah, was that in your lesson?
Yeah, he wrote Hanky on the back of his head. Yeah. Thought the pen top was off.
He thought the pen top was like on, and he's got like this great big, like a proper big board mark. And back in the day, I don't really know, like some sort of undercut, whatever, but he got like the back of his head was just shaved, and he basically wrote on the back of his head like hanky, thinking that the lid was on or whatever. And we were like, dude, you just written on your head. And he's like, no, I haven't. He's like, dude, seriously, you've just written on it. And he turned around and literally got a hanky written on the back of his head. I mean, how he did it, it was pretty impressive.
He'd done a pretty solid job of it. You got to give you credit where credit's due.
And then he was like, could I go and wash it off? And literally just there for ages, trying to get this bloody permanent marker off the back of his head. It was brilliant. It was genius. So what my story, and it sort of dulls over time, and I can't remember how and why it happened, but it was in the sixth form. It was me and Ad. Dave was there, and we'd been playing this game with like a paper scrub. Basically, it was like, can you hit it with your hand and like run around all the desks and stuff. And anyway, I think the handle on the door was a bit dodgy, and we basically shoved Dave into this room, and then we went to sort of close the door, and the handle came off. So basically, he was like locked in this room. And he couldn't get out, and he was like giving it all like giving it all effing and jeffing and stuff. And we were just in the corridor, like absolutely pissed ourselves laughing because he's locked in this room, can't get out. Next minute, so one of the deputy heads had got a class in this room, and he walked, and we were like, "Oh no, this isn't going to go down well." So we were like, "Sir, the door's locked. You can't get in." Like, Dave's in there, and he's like, "What's Dave doing in there?" Sort of thing. And Dave hadn't seen this at this point, so he hadn't seen the deputy head. He was like, "Well, you're gonna have to go and get the janitor, school, whatever it was." Anyway, so he came with a set of keys, and the deputy head was standing just off centre from where the door was, and there was a window in the door. Dave could see us, and we were crying, laughing. We were like genuinely like. Can't tell you how funny this was. And Dave burst through the door and basically started giving us this like volley of like foul and abusive language. And we just sort of went like that and turned, and he's like, "You," like this, because literally the deputy head of the school is like right there, staying right there. And it basically transpired that obviously Dave got in quite a bit of trouble. We got in a bit of trouble, but not loads. But just the way he come bursting through the door, and he come bursting through the door, he's giving us absolutely loads without realising this deputy head's standing there. This deputy head's just literally standing there, just letting him carry on. Just let him carry on for like 10, 15 seconds, just giving it absolute like full-on beans towards me and Adam. We're just like, "Mate, what are you doing?" And basically the door handle had come off. He was literally like locked in this room for a period of time. So, I mean, that was... It was one of those that it was hilarious. It was funny when you were there, but the fact that it was a deputy head, and he was like proper strict deputy head as well, and the way that Dave just come bursting through this door was genius. Another time we pushed him through it's like a concertina wall sort of thing, and there was a class to the side, and he basically just stood up and he just excuse me, just sort of basically just goes like strolling back through this class, and he come back out into the canteen and stuff. It was brilliant. One thing that I wanted to mention though, Ad, was obviously before we got involved with darts world records, you made another world record attempt, didn't you, when you were in school?
I did.
Did you want to talk us through that and tell us how that went?
Well, I wasn't successful because there was I'm not convinced it was a real world record in the first place, and second of all, the supporting evidence was insufficient. But yeah, I had a go at the length of time that any individual. Oh, I'm going to say there's two here. I could be letting myself down. There was smiling at a waste paper bin.
Not that one.
Okay, all right, that's a good job. Good job I didn't mention that one then, isn't it? Was it the peanut butter one?
It was the peanut butter one, yeah.
Tell you what. So when I did the Beans Does peanut butter one, I shared this story. But I tell you what, this one still rankles with me because I was stitched up. Mrs. Davies, you won't name your teachers. I'll name them. Mrs. Davies stitched me up because she hated me, and I can't say I blame her because I was a pain in the neck for her. She was my form tutor. She basically, they were looking at ideas for raising money. So I said, why not? Quickest time to eat like a kilo tub of peanut butter. I enjoy peanut butter, but I thought I ain't doing it. But somehow I got volunteered. I did not volunteer for that. I got put forward. My name was in the bulletin. You can tell if you want to tell your perspective of the story, because I told it before.
And this is how Ralph was created on The Simpsons.
I begged my Wookiee.
Honestly, so I don't know whether or not it was because Ad basically ran for sort of sixth form leader, for whatever better terms, at the anarcho-pacifist group party or whatever it was that. But there was some sort of, I don't know whether or not it's some sort of manifesto thing or they're trying to raise some awareness of this group, and he basically been put into, there was sort of spreading the word, it's genuine world record attempt. Dad's going to do it. He's going to eat this jar of peanut butter and stuff with a spoon, see how fast he can do it. It's going to be timed and everything. And they had this, like, it wasn't really a big auditorium. It's more just like an extended room, really, sixth form room. And I don't know how many people were in there, but there were quite a few. Anyway, there
was enough in there.
Yeah, there was enough. So Adam's at the front and he's got his jar of peanut butter and he takes the lid off. And we were like, there's someone there like a stopwatch, is like, right, 3, 2, 1, go at this. And basically just goes. And he must have been there for about, I don't know however long, you're like 10 seconds on the first mouthful. He's like, and then of course the crowd start getting a bit like restless and stuff. Oh, this is rubbish, sort of thing. And he's just there, still on the first two. He's like, tune phrase. So anyway, after about a disbanded, it was like, yeah, that ain't happening. And then there was this little goober lad, one at the front, and he goes, I'll do it or whatever. So this randomer, don't even know, I apologise if you're listening, if you remember this story, and he basically got up and he's like, yeah, I'll do it. So he got this massive spoon, he's like this, after, I don't know how many spoonfuls it was, but he's like, I'm going to be sick.
He was sick. He was sick.
And he literally like, and the crowd got more enjoyment out of him puking than Ad, who basically just stood there and went.
People don't, if you listen to me on here, perhaps you wouldn't believe it, but Gaz, you've known me for years. I'm a fairly shy individual. A few beers inside of me. To stick me in front of an auditorium like that, to do that, honestly, I remember being sat in politics beforehand and saying to Dave, "Oh, dude, I tell you what, I'm going to puke now. I've not had a bit of peanut butter already." And he was like, that deep laugh of his. Found it hilarious. Oh yeah, when you said at the start, the happiest times of my life. That one, yeah, that was the blip in the memories because wasn't that happy. But on the strangest point that you say there, yeah, I ran as basically we had a mock elections and I stood as an anarcho-pacifist. So the idea was, we brought in anarchy and you voted this in and we brought the system down from the inside. And for ages, I might even still have it now. I had it on my Twitter bio, and up until the point where I took it off, I was still getting people messaging me, like randomers saying, "Yeah, right on," and actually putting anarcho-pacifism in their Twitter bio as well. It's like, I made that up when I was like 16 and an idiot. It's not even a real thing.
It doesn't mean anything. It
doesn't. It's basically, if you look it up, it's basically syndicalism if you break down our political stance. But still, people message me about it. It's bizarre.
It's brilliant. Honestly, it's brilliant. And I mean, that whole, and it's funny because some of the stories that you recount and some of the stories that you retell, obviously, they lose a bit of humour in terms of just the length of time from when it's happening. You obviously recall certain things and what certain people say. So it's really difficult to sort of convey just some of the stupid stuff that we did. But every single day, in the sixth form, there's me, I had a couple of the lads and stuff, but every single day there would be something that would make us laugh. And I don't just mean like chuckle, I mean just outright like belly laugh, wasn't it?
Best days of your life.
And we took that on to certainly to college and stuff. And this, it's not a very PC story, but me and Adam basically were crying, laughing one time. This lad who came in and basically fell down some stairs, and everybody else, see, Ad's gone now. Everybody else was sort of really like worried about him, and all you could see at the front was me and Ad. We got our head down. You're trying to not laugh with your shoulders and just go like this. And this lad basically came in. He's just gone like literally all the way down. And me and Ad just literally tears rolling down. All right, literally rolling down.
That's only half the story.
It is.
You best not tell the other half.
I'm not gonna. Hence why I won't tell the other half. But yeah, me and Ad, we were there, and we were like this sort of thing, and everyone else, oh my God, are you okay? And we were just like sort of thing. And to this day, I mean, it's so wrong, and obviously there's another half to the story, but that won't be aired. But yeah, I'll perhaps tell you that. Maybe part two, mate.
Once we stop recording, we're not sharing.
Once we start recording, but yeah, so just certain things that little memories and stuff, memories of teachers. I think I'd just gone through the story about the teacher we convinced he couldn't be asked to mark any of our work. So we were just
we've never told it on this podcast, I do, but tell it, it's a good one.
So we were notoriously, shall we say, lazy in terms of doing our work. So we were behind on various sort of deadlines and stuff, and we sort of convinced this guy, and we sort of approached this guy and said, look, do you actually really genuinely want us to do it or not? Like, can you be bothered to actually sit there and mark it and give us a grade and go through all of that? Or should we just forget it? We won't spend time doing it. You won't spend time marking it. And you know what? Just average our grades out, whatever. And if you need us to actually do something, we'll do it. And he went, yeah, all right.
Top man.
Which fucked me and Dad were like, really? He's like, yeah, fine, whatever. We were like, yes. And I won't, again, for various legal reasons, okay. I won't mention his name, and I won't mention where we studied. But yeah, we basically said, look, dude, seriously, like, and he was like, yeah, fair enough. And it's just like, mate, honestly, it was funny. But yeah, so just funny stories, and I liked school. I had a great time at school, growing up, and it's weird because one of the things that I was doing a bit of reading and stuff, and they said, when you Google and you sort of say, you know, why is school days the best days of your life and stuff, and the number one thing that comes out is because you make friends for life. And it's like, and I suppose that's what, do you know what I mean? You make friends that, and yeah, you might not see them, and they might now live in a different country, or but obviously because of social media and stuff, you can still get in touch with them. But you know, back in the day, you know, the lads that I went to school with and the lads that I grew up with, and obviously you know, even now, you know, friends for life, and you just, you know, you look back and you think it was so carefree. Do you know what I mean? Literally so carefree. It was just no real responsibility. You didn't even have to really work that hard to get any money. It was like, mum, dad, can I have 20 quid? Yeah, okay, that went. You know, 2 days later, mum, dad, can I have another 20 quid? He's like, yeah, okay. You know, and it literally is just like, I mean, where they got it from? And looking back now, you think, Christ, you know, where did they get that from? But yeah, just such a good time, and I do. It does make me sad that obviously now teaching, you know, and I see perhaps sometimes the flip side where sometimes kids, they don't necessarily have like a real good memory of school and stuff, and a real good memory of home and stuff. So having gone through that and thinking, yeah, school was brilliant, to actually now looking at it and sort of being involved in the education of some kids that maybe school is slightly more challenging, it does make you appreciate sort of the time that I had growing up in school and stuff. And my heart does go out sometimes to kids that perhaps don't feel as though school is a good time, obviously because of bullying and this, that, and the other, you know, and it's horrendous, and I wouldn't wish that obviously on anybody. But I hope we've brought just a little bit of sort of joy, just recounting some of the stories and stuff. I don't know whether or not there's any other sort of stories, any other sort of memories, good or bad, that you want to sort of finish off with, you want to round off with.
Well, you never told your social area story.
Okay. So we were in an assembly. I'm assuming this is the one that you meant. We were in an assembly, and the old social area, it's filled in now and it's flat. But back in the day, there was like a series of sort of, and it was like steps, and there was like a pit in the middle, and you used to sit around, and it was stone, and I can't remember, it was the head teacher or one of the deputy heads or heads of year, so it was given an assembly, and I let out the biggest fart you ever want to hear in your life, and it's just at the moment that he'd finished speaking, it was deathly quiet, and I'm not even joking you, like my whole ass rippled, it was that bad, it was horrendous. And I managed to not do what Adam has done there, and I literally sat perfectly still, and the two lads that were either side of me, one on the left and one on the right, literally fell about themselves laughing, at which point the head of year whatever goes, you out, like this, and I sat in the middle and I never moved, and these two lads basically got hauled out and stuff, and they got proper bollock for it. But I literally sat there, tears literally, like, again, just rolling down my face like this, keep me head And the two lads there, honestly, and logic would dictate that it can't be him and him, but those two obviously were just like creased themselves laughing, you out sort of thing, and just dead childish, just ridiculously childish kid humour at school. But yeah, that was my sort of social area sort of story. And there's various others that one in a maths lesson, actually. I won't mention the maths teacher's name. Didn't have a great lesson. Let's just say it descended into chaos, and various sort of paper airplanes being slat around the room, and this, that, and the other. And I was sat 2 rows back, and I remember there was a lad that sat in the front row, and there was a paper airplane came over, and it basically went like this and lodged into a female teacher's top. Well, the lad on the front row, and again, I won't mention his name, I won't mention the teacher, basically just plunged his hand down to get this paper airplane and rummaged a bit. And it was awful. Being a teacher now, I just, my heart went out, because literally this female teacher just like so shocked, and then just sat there, and then actually like didn't really say anything. And that was a couple of other kids that were like, me being one, and we were a bit like, oh, that's like too far. Do you know what I mean? That's like, there's a line there. But this lad just like carried on. I mean, don't get me wrong, he got absolutely caned for it and stuff after that. But yeah, that was a sort of a story or a memory that you think it's a good time and you're having a laugh, and oh, we're going to terrorise the teacher sort of thing. But actually, even then, in the middle of it, you're a bit like, yeah, that's not great sort of thing. So, but that was in a maths lesson. But yeah, that was a bad story. So I've come to the end of sort of my little bit about sort of funny stories, memories, good and bad. If I was to ask you to sum up then everything that we've talked about for the last 45 minutes, 50 minutes, whatever it is, if I should just sum up and try to turn everything we've talked about into sort of 2, 3, 4 words, what would be those words that if somebody said to you, right, what did school make you feel, or what was your recollections of school in terms of just 3 or 4 keywords? So fun, enjoyable, horrendous. So what sort of, how would you sum up your experience of school, Ad?
Tough to do it in that kind of thing. I can probably sum it up in one anecdote, if that's any good for you.
Yeah.
Basically, you obviously, a couple of times a year you had your reports to take home to your mum and dad, didn't you? And I remember those reports. I remember reading at the time and finding them funny, because it would be like B for work, D for effort. And I'd think, that's because I'm clever and I don't have to put any work in. There's no effort there because I'm smart. Yeah. I'm clever. Yeah. And anyway, they used to write some things about it. I used to laugh it off. And then when my mum was cleaning out her loft, she said, found your school reports. And I sat down and I read them. I thought, wow, those comments stung a little bit, 20 years on.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, wow, yeah, I was a bit of a knob, wasn't I, really, when I think about it? At the time, they don't bother you. But yeah, I think the other thing that I would say as well, Gaz, is perspective. Perspective is the one word that I think of. So you told that story there about that teacher, and at the time, no doubt, we'll have laughed about it. When you look back at it now with an older head, you think, that's a step too far.
Yeah.
And you think about kids who haven't enjoyed their time. Your kids are at school now. Mine will be going to school soon, and it's that fear of what they're gonna, what they're gonna be faced with when they get there. I hope they have the same memories as me. Hope they do a little bit more work than me to be told. But that's probably how I'd sum it up.
Yeah, Andy, do you want to sort of sum it up?
I don't know. I'd sidetracked me then.
Sorry,
dude. Yeah, I mean, like for us, school's different. School's different for me than it was from you guys. I think it's
because we're old.
Back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I found it was easy, and I didn't put a lot of effort in either, and I just coasted through it. Yeah, nowadays I think you got social media and all that, probably harder, but But yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it because it's just like, I had a young body, just like, do whatever sports, you're invincible, weren't you?
Yeah. I think that's the thing, isn't it? I think you when you are younger and you're at school, you do think you can do anything. I say the responsibilities isn't really there, is it? And decisions and stuff that you make, you just think you're invincible, don't you? That's the key. I think for me, if it's summing it up, if you and I'll take Adam's point about the reports. I think it was sort of enjoyed a good time, but could do better. Do you know what I mean? I think that probably summed up, don't get me wrong, I love my time at school. But I think if you were to sum it up, it would have been, and if I, with my teacher hat on now, was writing a report for me as a kid back then, I think it would be, could do better. And that sort of rankles with me a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Because I think, you have got 5 years, 6 years, 7 years of you to sixth form and then college and all that and the other. And you think actually it's a lot of time just to sort of throw away and waste, if that makes sense. But don't get me wrong, I had some great times at school, some real fun, some fun times, some fun stories, met some great characters, great people that I didn't grow up with, sort of thing. You go through your first girlfriend at school and all that sort of, first car, that you had and stuff, and all those firsts that you had when you were at school. And they do stay with you. And even now when I say to kids, I go enjoy school, the best days of your life, I do still sit there and think, actually, yeah, they were for me. I genuinely really did enjoy going to school. And you're in lessons, and lessons can be a bit, you're middle of a lesson that you don't get on with or you don't enjoy, and you're like, God, this is boring. But actually, and I think that comes back to Adam's perspective, when you then wrap it all up and think, actually, on the whole, for me, it was a pretty positive experience. And in a way, there's probably one or two things that, again, you could sort of follow on from and say, is there anything you could talk about, sort of maybe employment or that could be a completely different podcast sort of thing. But sort of leading on from schools, anything that's happened at school that's you've learned for later on in life, or the skills or the lessons that you've learned in school that you're now bringing in later on in life. So whether or not there's a follow-up to school days, call it older days, I don't know. I'd have to have a think about that. But it's just, while I was sort of convalescing, is that the right word? In sort of recovering from COVID, I just started to think about what school was like for me. And I'd just like to share, like to obviously share a couple of stories and stuff. And obviously being sixth form with Ad, there was a couple of sort of common stories there. But just interesting to get your guys' perspective on your school life and so how you felt and how it impacted you. So one last thing though, just before we go. And for me, the answer is no. But are you now in the employment that you thought you would be when you were at school? No.
No.
What did you want to be then?
Well, I was going to be a parapsychologist, investigator / consultant.
And Andy, what was your big dream sort of?
Well, Premier League footballer. I always wanted to work in IT, so I am now. So I suppose I sort of am in where I wanted to be. But when I was at school, I didn't really imagine where I was when I was older. I just liked IT, so it's either that or sports.
Yeah, okay. It's weird because I'd always had this big vision of going down to Fleet Street, working in London, being a sports journalist. Love sport, love playing it, love watching it, still love watching it. And I sort of took A-level English, and I always remember it. And they started talking about lexicostatistics and glottochronology, and I was like, yeah, that's not for me. I genuinely still don't know what that means. And when you start saying stuff like that, and to be fair, they said to me in sixth form, they're like, yeah, your sort of written English is probably not going to be strong enough. And then they advised just me to sort of drop A-level English. And I was like, all right, okay. And then really pretty much from that moment, that was sort of the dream of being a sort of Fleet Street journalist, sort of done and dusted.
And now you're an English teacher.
But it's weird because even growing up, I used to do quite a bit of stuff. I had coaching badges for a couple of different sports, and sort of used to run sports clubs and this, that, and the other. And And it's my old deputy head at Alsager, and he said, "Oh, why don't you teach? You know, you've got. I've obviously seen you when you're sort of coaching younger kids. You've got a nice way of sort of getting things over and presenting sort of stuff." And I was like, "No, I don't want to be a teacher. Nobody wants to be a teacher, do they?" But it's weird because then, like, the longer that you go, the more it came towards the front of my mind, and it was like, actually, I could do that, and I could see myself doing that, and obviously it's the career and stuff that I chose, and I don't regret doing that now because I thoroughly enjoy teaching, and I have thoroughly enjoyed teaching. But it's weird. I'll just like not necessarily a throwaway comment, but just the odd comment that he made, and now I'm basically doing what he thought I would always end up doing. It wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an English. I want to be a sports journalist, but it's weird how perhaps somebody else can see something new that you don't see, and then all of a sudden, all these years later, I'm now doing what he suggested and thought I'll be good at, which is a bit weird. So I'm going to wrap it up then, and I think the last thing for me to say is obviously social media wise, if anyone wants to get in touch, wants to sort of drop us any messages about their sort of experiences of school, sort of good or bad, sort of any funny little anecdote stories, then you can obviously contact us in all the normal ways. And it just remains for me to say to you guys, if you want to sort of say your goodbyes, and we'll go from there. Right, do you want to go first?
Yeah, before I go and say goodbye, I want to give a quick shout out to a guy by the name of Kevin Green who got in contact with us via Twitter, and he has his own podcast called The Tall Thin Idiot. I want you guys to go out there and listen to it because it's just a little bit different. I've never heard a podcast quite like it, and I mean that in a totally positive, complimentary way. It's kind of like he does it in a style if it were Paddington Bear's next door neighbour doing an impression of Kenneth Williams doing an impression of a vaudevillian comedian.
Okay.
I don't know if I've sold that right, and I apologise if I haven't, Kevin. But yeah, give it a listen because it is very, very, very entertaining. And on that note, I'm going to say goodbye and leave you with a quote from a movie from our school days, which was Ferris Bueller, which was life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. Take care.
Andy?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Got me thinking about the days from gone by and all that. But I'll quote a famous teacher. Drugs bad, okay?
And on that note, it only really leaves me to say a quote again: life moves with no boundaries. Explore and invent as you go, because survival is an art. And on that note, I shall bid you all farewell and look forward to the next one. And see you later, guys.
Anyway, this kid who fell down the stairs.